Está finidata.
Hello, sirs and ladies, and welcome to another episode of Knights of the Debate Table. This one came from, well, it was inspired by an episode of Pointless, where there was a Eurovision type question. I can't remember the exact details, but just before we get started, because I'm going to use my usual method of, my comfortable go-to method of Converter app to put my voice under the video. Some of the flags will repeat, and for those of you who are savvy with flags and not so savvy, it's there's going to be Ireland, UK, New Zealand, Australia, Chile, Israel, Russia, Belarus, Turkey, Cyprus. What else was there? There was, I mean, you'll see them when you know, as you're watching the video, and you are seeing them, depending, my favourite, that old phrase from Doctor Who, timey-wimey. And there's, Vatican City and San Marino, and Chile as well. And, some of those sound weird, Australia, New Zealand, Chile. But this is about, like, who's in and who's out, and who do you think should remain in and should be out? Do you believe that any country should be excluded from Eurovision? For example, those of you out there, there's some stuff that I'm a bit on the fence with, as it were. So, So, for example, let's start with like a weird one. Now, they do have in Chile. Chile's part of Chile. Yeah, Chile or Chile. Yeah, Chile or Chile, depending on which you prefer. They're not part of Eurovision itself, the original competition that's been going for decades, for donkey's years. But they do, for some reason, there is a Eurovision Latin America. Now, those of you out there, depending on my geographical audience, I'm not sure if I put you guys there, but I don't suppose it really matters, because I've had also some comments from I think people from countries I didn't put in my list, in my audience reach list. I think that's what it was when I was setting my actual content creator kind of profile up. But do you, those of you out there from Chile, and the near surrounding areas like Bolivia and Peru, I suppose, as an example, to shout out to anyone from those weird and wonderful countries. Do you believe that? I mean, what are your views on Eurovision Latin America? Do you think it's pointless? Do you think it doesn't make sense? Do you like that it's come over to Central America? I myself, I'm gonna interject some of my viewpoints if I can, if I have some viewpoints. My viewpoint is that, I mean, it's kind of interesting that there's a Latin American version of Eurovision. I mean, and this is me that can't stand Eurovision, but the politics involved are sometimes a bit weird and frustrating and unusual and fascinating all at the same time. They're a real dichotomy and blend or whatever. But yeah, there's also part of me that thinks it's a bit pointless that there's their own I guess sub show in a technically not European place or whatever, if you get the gist. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. The next ones I'm gonna move on to are Australia and New Zealand. Now, Australia is part of Eurovision. It has been since 2015. They earned a permanent slot because they were so popular for some reason. But I understand that New Zealand isn't part of Eurovision. Now, this appeals to, of course, both Aussies and Kiwis. Do you believe that you should be part of Eurovision? Do you think it's a load of twaddle that you're there? And next one, and as for you Kiwis out there, those of you out there, seeing as your Australian cousins or half siblings, probably cousins more like, cousin brothers, as some of my Pakistani mates say. Yeah. Hashtag hood slash casual racism. Not really. But yeah, do you believe that you should have the right to be enter contestants in Eurovision, for example? And how do you feel about, like, say, Tonga and Vanuatu and Tuvalu maybe being part of Eurovision? But that's a bit like as an extension thing. And maybe Eritrea, because they used to be an Australian territory, and so on and so forth. Maybe I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that while putting together the images that would make the bulk of the video. But yeah, how do you believe that you deserve a spot equal to Australia as like a rival, or for example? Now, going to move on to Russia. Russians out there, do you believe that? I'm using that terminology a lot. That starting point a lot. Do you think it's unfair that Russia, those of you out there, I mean, this is for anyone, but maybe Russians in particular. So, any possible Russians watching, any Belarusians watching, any Ukrainians watching? Do you think that it's unfair that Russia and this goes for Israel as well because of what's been kind of on in the news for the past several years. Do you think it's unfair that Russia and Israel, and I think Belarus isn't part of it. Yeah, Ukraine is, but Belarus, Russia aren't, and it is the whole Israel thing as well. Do you think that it's unfair that that Russia, Belarus, and Israel have been excluded from from Eurovision? Because this is not that I really care that much about Eurovision, but the politics, like I say, are quite fascinating in a really annoying way. Kind of not unlike the Olympics. I think the political side of it, when you're doing a contest, um, should should you should stay out of it. I think just because a leader is being a dickhead, for example, or a certain faction are being a dickhead, being dickheads, then I think it doesn't matter. It's like when the Soviet Union got excluded from the Olympics way back when. I think maybe East Germany did, or maybe they didn't. Maybe there's some hypocrisy there. But I think it's stupid. It's fascinatingly stupid. So yeah, do you think it's unfair in that regard that Russia and blah 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 blah, that I mentioned, yeah, that they're being excluded, and also Israel? Do you think it's silly that if you do go back in, do you think it's silly that you're in Eurovision anyway? Because that's sort of like getting to my next point with Turkey, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think I can't remember if Turkey are in or out. But this applies to Cypriots as well. Do you believe that? What are your feelings on being? Oh yeah, they are in. Yeah, Turkey are in Eurovision. What is your stance at Cypriots? Greeks and Turk Cypriots. What are your stances on being in Eurovision alongside Turkey, for example? And also Greece and also Britain, because it's quite British. But yeah, what are your stances of being kind of Eurovision rivals with those three? Um, um, yeah, the whole yeah Cypriots. How do you feel about being fellow contestants with people that have been, and this is a kind of political debate too, in a way. This is what happens on, Leader History Boy every now and again, because it's just like that, you know. Society, civilization, any kind of national thing, such as, well, Eurovision, yeah. So yeah, how do you Turk Cypriots and Greek Cypriots, respectively, how do you feel about being fellow contestants with, I suppose, in differing eras and now, and so on and so forth? Feel free to educate me more on what's happening in Cyprus, for example. It has been happening in Cyprus over decades and decades. How do you feel about sharing, being contestants alongside the UK and Turkey? And yeah, following on from the UK thing, I meant to say that after Turkey. How do you? Yeah, the Irish people. How do you feel? What are your attitudes towards Eurovision? I mean, leaving aside great presenters that you lot have given us, such as Graham Norton. I mean, I sort of like Graham Norton. I mean, he's grown on me a little bit, but no one will ever top Terry Wogan ever. I'm sorry. He's like an eccentric or eccentric, which whatever the pronunciation is, kind of great uncle to me. I was greatly saddened at the news of his passing. And this was like when I was what, just starting high school, maybe a bit earlier. So it's quite a long time ago. God, I sound old. So yeah, Irish people, what are your stances on Eurovision? And so UK as well. Yeah, leaving my fellow countrymen out in a way. But yeah, that's a debate for another day. For example, how people feel about identity and all that bonkum. So yeah, what are your feelings about Eurovision? And and also the Papal States too, Vatican City and San Marino. Do you feel that you should? Not wrong, but do you believe that it doesn't really make sense based on popularity alone? It is Eurovision after all, but then you have Turkey. Like Turks, there's the whole Turkish identity thing too, and I think it's not too dissimilar from the British identity in the way that it's like there's people that just feel like they're more of a thing or they're their own thing. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And this is done. So yeah, to leave off, probably quite fittingly, even though this flag, this nation was the second is the second image in the video. Like I say, they're kind of in no particular order. Well, kind of, sort of associated countries or ones that were associated with each other or neighbours. To an extent, like Australia, New Zealand, and Great Britain and Ireland, and countries that had history with each other, etc. And blah 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 blah. Like Turkey and Cyprus and Belarus. In this video. God, yeah. So to leave off, yeah, fellow blighters. How do you feel about being in Eurovision? Do you think we, as fellow countrymen, I guess, yeah, we're a country, fuck it. It's, whether you feel, English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish, Manx, Gurney, Jerry, Jersey. I can always forget how to pronounce that. Sark. I don't know what the singular for someone from Sark is. For example, yeah. How do we all feel? As in we, as in you, my particular blighter audience. How do you feel being in Eurovision? Do you think we should just leave because of the European Union? Do you think it doesn't matter, seeing as the whole there was you can compare it with the whole Eurovision Latin America, Chile having its own thing. I think Chile, like Australia, entered in a year and then became popular. But the difference is Australia actually are part of Eurovision, whereas Chile became part of its its Central American spin-off show, which is the exact same thing in all but location. You know, for example, Eurovision is generally takes place, or at least in this year, it'll take place in Austria. I'm not sure if it does. I'm not really up on it. Um, I'm not a fan, but I think it gave me. But yeah, I've had some inspiration around a subject that, at face value, to me is quite boring and overhyped. But the political side of it, it's fascinating to ponder in its way. You think, those of you. This is the point of the debate table thing. You know, those of you that don't give a toss. Those of you who think you shouldn't be in it. A country shouldn't be in it. Or do you think just politics in general should just stay out of it? Um, or do you think there are some countries such as Australia and Chile that it doesn't really that well, especially Australia specifically. Do you think it's wrong? I didn't ask. Oh, sake.